Okay, here we go. Stand by. 3, 2, 1, action.
Assume nothing.
Brash, bald-faced blasphemy.
Question everything.
I find it extremely hard to imagine.
Open your eyes.
It is quite all right to be an atheist.
The fastest growing group of people in the country has been measured as being those who have no belief or who are atheists.
You don't have to be apologetic or quiet about it.
Challenge the opposition.
You see religion on 100 fronts losing the argument.
And start thinking. This is the Thinking Atheist worldwide.
David Smalley is founder and president of Dogma Debate, a radio podcast that covers pretty much everything from religion to politics to social issues to pretty much whatever the hell they feel like talking about. He's a former believer. We'll ask him about that. He's a popular author and speaker, speaks all around the country. He's the former editor of American Atheist magazine, and he's author of a book called Baptized Atheist. Ladies and gentlemen, David Smalley, glad you're on the show, my friend. Glad you made it.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So, Baptized Atheist, is that like a play on the whole immersion thing? You're now immersed in reason, or what's the story on that deal?
Actually, no. The moment that began my atheism was my baptism.
Well, are you going to make me buy the book? Or are you going to tell me what happened?
On audio, nonetheless. You have to go get it on audio.
Oh my God. He's already shilling. He's been on the show 60 seconds,
baby.
for Pete's
It's a
sake.
new record.
So wait, was it a baptism by immersion? Were you sprinkled? Was it oil? I mean, what happened?
You know, I'd always just kind of gone along with whatever socially I was supposed to do. Christianity, I was very much a social Christian. And being baptized really formalized it for me. It made it so that what I've done now is made a statement that I am on a team, that I'm a representative. This is something that I've staked claim in and that is now some ownership. And I felt responsible. I felt like I, as a Christian who has now been formalized, this is major. This is a major event. And as I'm standing in the water, and this is how the book starts off, I'm standing in the holy water, in the baptistry at a Baptist church. And the preacher says to me, "Do you believe Jesus Christ died for your sins so that you may enter the kingdom of heaven?" And I said, "I do." And at that very moment when I said that, it ran through me like, why should punishing the innocent somehow pardon the guilty? And it just suddenly started. I was only 15. And he said, then you're hereby saved in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And he took me underwater, and as soon as I hit the water, I immediately regretted my decision. And not because I was instantly an atheist, but because I felt like I'd committed to a relationship that I didn't deserve. I felt like I wasn't good enough to be baptized. I wasn't good enough to be considered on the team. And so because I'd had all these doubts and all these questions, it was a very emotional moment for me. And I walked up out of the baptistry, and of course, in the Baptist churches, it's very much a ceremonial thing, and they do several people at once. And at the end of it, the preacher, and I say this in the book, must have seen the doubt on my face. And it was one of the freakiest things that ever happened to me. It was pretty obvious that I was very uncomfortable. And he just walked over to me, and he leaned down and he said, "Son, you can't just say you believe. You have to know it to be true in your heart." And immediately, I knew that I didn't know anything. I didn't know anything to be true in my heart. I had way too many questions, and I felt like I was not a good enough Christian. So that set me on a course of, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it right. And it shouldn't be about maybe and perhaps and I think and faith and belief. I want to know this to be true. So let me research it and find out. And the deeper I got into the Bible, and I just kept studying and kept researching and talked to philosophy professors and preachers and just immersed my life in Christianity for 13 years. And I got so close to God, I saw that he wasn't there.
You and I have that in common, Dillahunty. I hear this story so many times, right? I went out to prove God, to find the relationship that I knew I needed with my Lord and Savior. And the more I looked behind the curtain, the more I thought, hey, wait a minute, something here just doesn't add up. How long ago was it? When did you first say the word atheist?
I I started off with I'm not a Christian around 17, 18, and that was not welcomed. So I didn't say atheist probably until early 20s.
And your radio show, Dogma Debate, is not really an atheist show. You guys talk about all sorts of stuff.
Well, it gets classified as that often, but yeah, you're right. We cover a lot of current events. We do debates. I mean, we have not necessarily formal debates, but we do sort of pride ourselves on having good relationships with believers, and we have believers either in the studio or over the phone. In fact, tomorrow night, we have a Catholic apologist joining us with Jerry DeWitt in studio, and we're going to have a very open conversation with Jerry and this Catholic apologist. And you know, every time we do this, it ends up being a very good learning experience for everyone. But you're right. Sometimes we have shows that are leaning more toward atheist entertainment. We do, you know, sort of liberal swinging jokes, and we kind of keep it light. But yeah, we cover a lot of current events too. It's not just about atheism and religion, but you definitely find out what a lot of atheists think about things other than religion. That's for sure.
And that probably runs the gamut. We certainly see patterns, we see trends, but it's funny. Some people say because you are an atheist, you will automatically think this way or have this philosophy or this political worldview, and that's not at all the case.
No, not at all, and that gets a lot of people in trouble, actually. It really does, because they assume that because you're an atheist, you have no basis to hold this other particular worldview, and then you get shocked when someone actually is an atheist, yet happens to carry a gun, or is an atheist but is against gay marriage. And so that's a little bit of a culture shock, I think, within the atheist community, to meet someone. You finally connect with someone, because most of us, and I'm sure this is the same with you, when you first realize that you are an atheist, you think you're the only one. And then you find that other atheist across the world on the internet and go, oh, that guy, I need to find him. And then you find out there's a whole community of people. And then you start to immerse yourself in this, wow, I have a family, I have people that understand me. And then one day it just slaps you in the face that this guy is actually your enemy sometimes, even though he's also an atheist. And I think that's shocking for a lot of people.
Maybe the word adversary is, I'm not sure enemy is the word. I mean, I don't.
No,
Yeah,
I
I get
agree.
what you're saying.
Right.
I mean, when it comes to some specific issues, yeah, we stand apart, far apart. I get that.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think adversary is a much better word.
Well, I was talking today on the Facebook page about the name of my website, The Thinking Atheist. First of all, I correct everybody. I'm not talking about me. The Thinking Atheist is an icon. It is a reminder. It is a celebration that we should all be thinking. We should always have critical thought engaged, because we're all guilty of irrationality in many areas of our lives. And some people come to me and they say, isn't thinking atheist redundant? I mean, after all, if you're an atheist, you must be thinking, meaning you are thinking critically about everything. And I'm like, you have not seen my inbox, right? Just because somebody does not believe in a deity does not mean they are thinking critically or rationally about the other aspects of their life, or that they came to atheism from critical thought. I had a dream, and the voice in my ear said, there is no God, and that's how I know. Well, you're an atheist, but you didn't get there via critical thought. And you probably see a lot of that. You know, I'm an atheist, therefore I am a critical thinker about everything in my life. That's just not true out there.
It's not at all. In fact, Matt gives a great talk on how atheists need to be better skeptics, and I love the way he puts it.
Is that the one he did at American Atheist in Austin?
Yes.
Yeah, I hear it all the time. We fake the moon landing. This comes from an atheist. Or the government's using chemtrails to poison our minds for mind control. Or, I talk to the dead. Whatever. I mean, and these people are atheists, and you have to occasionally shake your head, and then you just realize that people are people, and we're all guilty of irrationality, some more than others, and you just have to keep your eyes and ears open out there. Are people constantly lobbing criticism and critiques at you? Oh, hey, look, David, do this with your show, man. You're doing this totally wrong. Let me help you fix it. Do you get a lot of that?
Yeah, I do. And, anytime you put a microphone in front of your face and you say things that other people can hear, especially when it goes out live, you kind of put a target on you to some degree to say, look, this is my name, this is who I am, and you put yourself out there to some level of criticism. And I'm certainly open to that. And also, I'm always willing to grow, I'm always willing to get better. But there does seem to be, I don't know if it's just a small population or just a growing number of individuals that somehow feel like their contribution to the movement is to be the critic of everything atheist broadcast that there is. They will troll Twitter, they will be on YouTube, they hit the podcast scene and just decide to tell everybody, like, my job is here to make a difference and to reach people and to have a message and to find out why believers believe the way they do and how they justify it. And they feel like their job is to tell me how much I suck. And I'm thinking, on one hand, fine, I'm open to your opinion, but at the same time, take a step back and realize, before you start slamming all the people out there doing something, we're doing something for the overall movement. We're, a lot of times, like you said, skeptics or atheists first. We are activists, and this is just our niche that we've carved out that we feel like we can be good at to help reach more people. And for people to sit back and just go, I just want to spend my time, instead of being an activist and actually making a difference, I want to go criticize the people that are actually doing something.
Well, these are the people that they're not doing it right. They're not doing it, but they can do it better. I'm not doing it. I don't have a show. I don't have a blog. I don't have a voice. I don't have any. I'm not really involved anywhere, but I can do it better. Now, I totally agree with you that we need to be open to people who have criticisms and critiques. And geez, anybody, again, who's seen my inbox probably knows, hey, Seth, we hate you talk too much. We hate your laugh. Your monologues are too long. I hate your tangents. I love your tangents. Take fewer calls. Take more calls. Change your intro. Have more guests. Have fewer guests. Everybody's got an opinion, and all those opinions conflict with each other. And you have to sort of learn how to take the temperature of all of this avalanche of opinion that happens to be coming in. But, we don't want to be surrounded by people who just agree with us. If I'm doing something that needs to be improved or fixed or corrected, hell, I want to know that.
And no one has to handle me with kid gloves. I think my inbox probably looks a lot like yours, and that there's a lot more love than there is hate. But the hate that does come in seems very directed at specific moments in time. And I look back and I go, wow, we hit at 84 episodes, we hit 500,000 downloads. And you're talking 2 to 3 hours per show, hours and hours and hours of broadcast out there. You have gone back in time to a specific episode in a specific moment in time in a specific sentence and decided to write 7 paragraphs about how this offended you and how I should never do another show. It gets a little crazy.
We're all evolving, aren't we? I think of who I was even in 2010. I hadn't been out of religion that long. And I think I probably said some stuff on the air that if I was to hear it, and I don't go back and listen to a lot of archive shows, but, if I heard myself say it now, I'd probably think, oh, wait a minute, that's not really right. I've taken a few steps in a different direction since those days. Yeah. Change is just part of the game, isn't it? We're always changing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I even had fun with it on one show, and I'm going to revive this. I'm going to do it again very soon. So we've often joked that we only had 3 listeners on the show. It's always been that we only have 3 people listening. And that joke started when JT Everhard was on the show. And I mentioned something like, both listeners that hear this show are going to be aggravated or going to be pissed or something. And JT said, so it's me, Matt Dillahunty, and one other guy. And we laughed and we said, okay, those are the 3 listeners. And immediately after that, I received hundreds of emails, and people were signing their emails the 4th listener. And it just sort of caught on that people became, it's a small group of people. We're all just hanging out talking. There's only 3 people that listen. So if you're listening to Dogma Debate, you're the 4th listener. And so it sort of caught on and became this rite of passage now if you're the 4th listener. Now there's even like a membership people sign up for and join us to get behind-the-scenes content and things like that. Well, I did one thing, a segment one time called Facts from the 4th Listener. And I would read fact number 1. Do not ever do your Rush Limbaugh impersonation again. It was horrible, and I immediately turned off the computer when I heard it. Fact number 2 from the 4th listener. The Rush Limbaugh impersonation is my favorite segment of the show. Yeah. Please do it every day. And we went through like 10 of these where one, coincidentally conflicted with the other or contradicted the other. And you're right. If you make your episodes or your broadcast specifically tailored to one person to make them happy, you're going to lose thousands of other people that want to listen. So
and
people
you're going to freaking waste your life. Think about it. If somebody is on YouTube, you post a video, let's say you post a show and there's a comment section and somebody comes in and they're causing a real problem, you probably address that. But if you were to hit the brakes every time you saw somebody who was being unpleasant or trolling they're platforming their deity, whoever it happens to be, or what. I mean, if you were to allow all of the pebbles on the road to derail what you're doing, you'd never get anything done. And I don't know about you, I find it's a real challenge to choose battles. You don't want to ignore it, but at the same time, man, you want to make sure you're not playing a completely reactive game. You want to be out there being proactive, setting goals, achieving those goals, trying to make a difference, and not allowing all of these little incidental things down here to steal your thunder. And it's a tough judgment call sometimes to make.
And I want to go on record with this too, because I think a lot of people in the broadcast industry will not say this. It seems to be the cool thing to do, to stand up and say, I don't care what you think. This is what I do, and I don't care what you think. And then whenever people harass the show or people say, now let me just be clear. If a listener emails and says, I really like this segment more than this segment, that's great. That's great feedback for us. We get to know why you tune in so we can do more of that. We love that. But to completely just rail against something or to be completely negative and to continue to harass or anything like that, it's horrible. It gets disgusting at times. And when you're faced with something like that, a lot of broadcasters or artists or whatever like to say, well, I don't care what you think. This is who I am. And I'm going to tell you, I do care what you think. And a lot of times when I snap back or when I say something to defend myself or defend the show against those kinds of attacks, people will say, why are you so sensitive? You're such a tool. Why are you being so sensitive all the time? Like that's a bad thing. And let me just say this. Yes, I'm sensitive when it comes to Dogma debate. I am. I've poured my entire life into it. I've been building this since 2008. I've spent so much time, so much money, so many sleepless hours in the studio up making audio, pulling together interviews for very, very, very minimal gain. And I've poured my heart and lack of soul into this this program and to this brand. And so when you attack it, it does hurt. I do take it personally. And I don't think being sensitive is necessarily a bad thing, because you know what? If I didn't care about it, if I wasn't sensitive, if I didn't treat this like my baby and build it and hold it and take care of it the way I do, you probably wouldn't enjoy listening to it.
Well, I'm not talking about somebody who's voicing an opinion and you're listening. I'm talking about you're like the guy in the dunk tank and people are just throwing softballs at you all day. I mean, that's a prison. And I understand how you could take I produce a video and somebody says something horrible about it. Yeah, it's like one of your kids. It stings a little bit. You think of all the dozens of hours you spend in the production room and somebody just blows it off. It takes them about 3 seconds to reduce all of your labor and all of your creative hours and the money you spent and the time, and they just blow it off next. I mean, that does sting a little bit, but I don't get too hung up on the rumblings down in the basement kind of thing. Dude, you got to move on. Otherwise, you'll be reacting all day to that stuff.
Yeah, and I'm getting better about it. It happens from time to time where somebody really catches me up, and most of the time I'll just say, okay, thanks for your feedback. All right, I appreciate it. But, an email is one thing, but if they catch you on Facebook where you're online and they're like, hey, I got to talk to you about this. In episode 47 at 32 minutes, and I'm like, okay, well, all right. I don't want to be a jerk. I don't want to blow them off. I want to answer their questions, but their questions, it starts to feel almost like I report to this person and that they're in charge because I'm making entertainment and kind of dancing the jig for them, And so when I do something they don't like, they feel the need to call me out on it. I don't want you to do this segment anymore. I turned it off when you did this. And from now on, I'm just like, wow, man, really?
I'm going to drop a name. Okay. I'm talking to Richard Dawkins 2 days ago, right? And I'm not doing this because I just wanted to say the name. All right. But I have a point, and the point was this, and you'll hear this in the interview in a couple of weeks, but he was talking about why he doesn't do debate with people like William Lane Craig and those types of people, because Dawkins is not a big debater, and people can choose whether or not they want to debate or not, whether or not that's their scene or they consider it productive. And I can go both ways and have, but I'll tell you, he said something about the oxygen of credibility. When many people are coming to you, right, they're trying to hitch their wagon onto the David Smalley train. What they're doing is, if they can get you to engage and to pinball back and forth and get yourself lost in the whirlwind, well, you have then given them the oxygen of credibility. You've actually given them so much of your time of day that it's helped them to sort of build a platform on which they can stand. And then, that's a whole lot different than somebody genuinely who's part of your audience coming to you and saying, look, I've got a real concern, or I want to share a story, or I really don't care for this, or would you look at this, or I'm pissed off. But if someone who's genuinely trolling, I don't give them the oxygen of credibility. I just move on, or I ban them. If you're disrupting the temperature of the page and bothering everybody else, I am not required to abide you. Your free speech is not all that important to me. This is not a free forum. This is a community of people who have come here for a reason. And if you can't play nice with everybody else, you're out of there. And that's just kind of how I fall.
For me, I think my problem is, Seth, figuring out the difference between the two. I think I always find out too late. I found out there was a troll too late. I think it's a genuine inquiry from a concerned listener. So I respond and I answer the question, and we go back and forth, and I'm trying to answer the question the best I can, but I don't even realize that I'm becoming more and more pissed off by these unsolicited attacks.
Look, I'm not an expert on how to pinpoint all those people. I don't know. I get suckered in too. I'm just as guilty.
What they smell like, please. Yeah, tell me. You got to tell us what they smell like so we can figure it out. I welcome the criticism. I do welcome the criticism. I want, I guess for me, it's just all about the approach. I don't know.
You mentioned social justice issues. Those are important to you. Let's talk about some of the things that are happening in the world that you've talked about, that you're addressing, that are near and dear to your heart, stuff that you'd like to bring to the table. What's going on with David Smalley?
Well, and this is probably my biggest pet peeve from people outside of the community. Why do you care? Why can't you just let people believe and shut up about it? And that question, when I first started answering it several years ago, was a very nice answer. It was, I care about people and I care about things, and I think religion can be poisonous at times, but I respect your belief. And over the years, I find myself becoming less and less respectful of those views because of the damage they cause. And when you look at the things out in the real world, whether it be marriage equality, people spending millions and millions of dollars to take rights away from same-sex couples, or women's issues in the country not being able to make decisions about their own body. When you look at this sort of oppression and this male-dominated society that has this order in which things are supposed to be, so many people, especially liberal folks in the country, see the problems and the lack of social justice that happens, and they don't even realize that it's all rooted in religion. And so when you're putting out a fire, you don't spray it from the top down. You start at the bottom, in the blue part of the fire where it's the hottest. If you put that out, the flame dies. And so my whole purpose is not that I'm afflicted with religion or I'm just so focused on religion I can't stop talking about it. It's because just about every damn issue out there that's affecting our country somehow can be traced back to somebody basing it on a religious doctrine and then trying to force their belief into legislation. And so I have to keep reiterating, I don't care that you believe if you just believe. But very few people stop at believing. They believe, and then they induce psychosis in their children by telling them Satan's watching and demons are going to get them if they don't clean their room. They tell their teenager who's struggling with gender identity that God hates him if he doesn't wear a baseball cap and get big muscles and go fight other boys. And we end up with this skewed view of society, women, gays, and everyone else because of this basis in religion. So that's the reason I do what I do. And it seems like I'm constantly having to tell people and constantly having to defend, oh, religion's good. If it gets people through their day, that's a good thing. Let them have what gets them through their day. Okay, let them have whatever gets them through their day as they take their God into the voting booth and take rights away from other Americans. No thanks. I'm going to stand up for the kid getting bullied. That's what I'm going to do. And if that makes me the bad guy, so be it.
Religion is designed to go viral. The Great Commission, go ye into all the world and preach the gospel. It is designed to infect, for lack of a better word. The idea of religion existing in a bubble, it happens. There are some people, and most of those people I think are deists, or they're such a casual cultural believer that they don't qualify. They have no idea what's in their Bible, but they know Jesus is real, right? They have no idea who wrote the book of Genesis, but they know it's true. Those types of people, whatever. It's the people who are out there on the front lines who are living their religion, who are taking the mission trips, who are going door to door, who are the people who are trying to get dinosaurs and Noah's Ark inside our science textbooks, those types of people. Unfortunately, religion is designed to spread kind of like a virus.
It does, and that you hit on another point. In Austin, just recently, the State Board of Education is at it again. There are people directly affiliated with creationist groups on the board, and they are pushing out this scientific evidence. They're trying to say, teach the controversy, teach both theories. Okay, teach all the theories that are accepted, because that's only one. There's only one theory that's actually accepted. What does it take to be a theory? You know, this is why it's a problem. People say, well, that's an education, that's politics, that's separate from religion. And I think, Seth, the thing that bothers me most about this is that religion ultimately is a wolf in sheep's clothing. It comes across as though it is the source of good. It comes across like, well, she's a good Christian babysitter, so let's let her do it. Or these people have, lawn mowing services, and they always have their Jesus fish on the back of their truck. And it's like they use this hood ornament to say, I'm in the club, use my business because we're good Christian people. When in fact, that very belief, that very principle, that mindset is what makes people start to become evil in the first place. And so when you look at atheism in our society, it's viewed as, well, that's the lack of morality, that's Satan. Mark, I think it was Mark 11:9, somewhere around there, where he says, if you're not with us, you're against us. There are a couple of different verses in the Bible. That's kind of it. If you're not the good guys, what are you? And so that's kind of what we've been pinned as. But in reality, the whole reason I'm fighting, the whole reason I'm speaking out and so passionate is because I love humanity. It's because I'm reaching out to protect those that either don't know any better or can't defend themselves or don't understand how to defend themselves. I'm reaching out to protect those being bullied and oppressed, yet some of the people that are being oppressed want to argue with me about how you can't just believe in nothing. It's mind-blowing.
Talking here with David Smalley, host of Dogma Debate, man, hero, legend, crusader for good. I'm just making shit up.
I have to add something to that real quick. I just accepted a position with Atheist Alliance International. I'm now the editor of Secular World magazine.
You big stud, you. Let's go to the phones. Area code 831. You're on the Thinking Atheist radio podcast. Who's this?
This is Donnie Ray Bailey Reed. How y'all doing?
Doing well. What's going on? What do you have for us tonight?
Well, I just want to say that this is almost like a fantasy come true. Two of my favorite talk show hosts together at the same time. And,
I don't know if I've ever been anybody's fantasy before. I feel mildly uncomfortable. I feel a little uncomfortable at this moment.
Yeah, it was nice meeting you, Seth, at the Atheist Convention there, the 50th anniversary. That was a fun thing, and also David as well. And I've also got to visit David at his studios, and I was very impressed at the professional way he conducts the show. And I've also been, I try to support you guys as much as I can.
Thank you.
A friend of mine asked me, how much are you going to keep supporting those guys? I said, well, my goal is to give them more than I gave the Jehovah's Witnesses in that 10 years I was in that mess.
10 years? I mean, a decade.
Wow. Yeah, in fact, when you had your show 2 weeks ago, I dialed in right at the beginning, and I was just surprised that, I never got there. And which actually made me kind of happy, because that meant there was so many more JWs ahead of me.
Oh, you should have seen the switchboard.
To talk to you, but
you should have seen my inbox. I mean, we've done Mormonism, we've done cults, we've done all of these different things. We've done the indoctrination of children, we've done the Church of Satan, we've done all of these things. The Jehovah's Witness show to date is one of the most, I don't know, I've seen more interaction, more interest in that sucker than many. And so I'm hoping everybody, if you haven't heard the show, it happened a couple weeks ago on our archive on Blog Talk Radio and at thethinkingatheist.com.
One of the reasons why you get so much attention from the Jehovah's Witnesses, and this is me speaking from my experience when I was in the cult, is that as a Jehovah's Witness, you're not allowed to read, watch, or talk about anything that's negative against the organization. So for a Jehovah's Witness, a lot of time the only thing he can hear that would be critical of the society would be radio or podcasts, that they can listen to on their, in their own private environment. If they got a book or if they are watching a TV show, they're always going to be afraid that somebody's going to walk up on them and say, "What are you reading there? Or what are you watching?" So a podcast or a radio show, is the way to go, and that's why so many people were so excited to hear that, because, hey, I can hear other people talk about what I probably believe about the witnesses myself, I'll be able to hear other people say that as well. Also, regarding you guys' shirts, I just wanted to tell you a couple of things that's happened, because I've actually worn some of your shirts to work for the past year. On Seth, I was actually walking out at lunchtime, and this guy was at a corner. There were several people, and he looked at I was wearing your shirt that's got just a head with a light bulb on it. That has no words or anything else. And he looked over and he goes, "Oh, great. Here's another Let's Go Green announcement. Is that one of those new expensive LED bulbs?"
Well, it's supposed to be a conversation starter. On the website, I offer two versions, right? One with and without text, so that somebody might be able to walk up and say, hey, that's a cool symbol, or what's that about? And somebody can then decide how they want to get into the conversation. Well, actually, you can say atheist, skeptic, free thinker, rationalist, humanist. You can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
And it's designed
That's pretty much what I told him.
I didn't see it as a green
And also
thing,
on David's, I've had this one lady come up to me on his I've got the fourth listener, and then it's got the Dogma debate, .com on it. And she looked at me and said, "Wow, is that one of those sites that talks about how to breed dogs?" And I'm just going, oh gosh, I would have never gone that direction. I would have never thought that, But you never know what people think when they see your shirts out there. But I've actually got at a neighboring company. There's 4 people now listening to David's podcast in the evenings. In fact, they're probably listening right now, and they actually call it the Dogma Den.
Oh, nice. That's awesome.
You just got groupies out the yin yang out there, buddy. That's amazing.
Well, we're trying to spread the news as much as we can, because I can't tell you how much you guys have meant to me, because when I found Seth's podcast in late 2011, and then I found David's, I think maybe third show into it in early 2012, and I get home every week, and the first thing I do on Thursday, because I know David's shows on Wednesday, is I plug my iPod up and download you guys' shows, and plus the Atheist Experience, everything that I've have added that are atheists. But you guys' shows are the best. I mean, they really are, because it's not only talking about skepticism and atheism, but y'all talk in a respectful manner. You're not there belittling people and making them feel stupid or dumb. You actually encourage debate or encourage discussion, and I appreciate that.
Very kind. Well, thanks for the kind words, Donnie. I appreciate you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, you guys take care.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Seth, I wanted to say something. I had a message from a listener about a shirt just the other day. He said that he wore his I have a T-shirt design that says, "I'm an atheist because I have read it." And then on the back it says dogmadebate.com. And a guy said he went to a coffee shop the other day, and he went up to pay for his coffee, and the lady behind the counter said, "No charge for a fellow fourth listener."
Oh, I love it. I love it.
That's awesome.
It's a good feeling, and those people, I think, are more prevalent than most realize. You're out there, you're sort of doing your thing in everyday society. You're going to the store, you're going to the office. Hell, I was at TSA hopping on a plane to go to a convention, and somebody said something. And I think they are, I hate the word like, kind of the sleeping giant. It's so melodramatic, but I'm saying that there are, I think, so many more non-religious people out there who are just, they're kind of playing chess right now. They're taking it a step at a time, but they're drawing great encouragement from the online atheist community. It helps them to sort of scratch that itch until they can sort of come out in their own lives.
Absolutely.
Area code 817. You're on the Thinking Atheist radio podcast. Who's this?
Hey, this is Mitch.
Mitch, thank you for waiting. Thanks for calling. What do you have for us tonight?
I wanted to speak about one of the issues I've been having recently, and I've talked to a number of my friends, who vary between atheist, theist, polytheist, and whatnot. So I like to keep a very wide gambit of people I'm able to communicate with. But one of the things I'd started noticing is a lot of my friends, mostly atheists, had begun speaking very ill of religion, and I can understand that. Heaven's religion has certainly done a number of things that are probably less than positive. But one of them recently was a friend of mine sent me a note about a book they're writing. And I was very interested. He's a very intelligent man going for his doctorates right now. But what I noticed the title was Religion and how religion poisons everything. Now, while I understand that's it's validated to a certain extent. I'd imagine there are some certain issues that apply with that. I mean, perhaps it's just me, but when someone says religion does something, that's kind of like insinuating that a gun kills people. It just doesn't quite, because, I mean, you can leave a gun on a shelf, and until someone touches it, it's not going to do anything. Same thing with religion. It's nothing more than a concept, a construct of words put together in order to equate to a meaning. So religion really can't do anything without a person doing something and acting upon it. It's the action, and humans are the reaction to it. So I was kind of curious on your views about that, because I've heard a lot of people talking about it recently and saying this and that, but I was kind of interested in your point of view on that subject.
I see the analogy. I don't know that it's completely a fair analogy, because gun is, of course, just a physical property. It's something you would have to pick up and do something with. Religion, though, intentionally targets people at a certain age. They intentionally lie to people. They intentionally defy. It's a long indoctrination process that is intentional to catch people while they're young and impressionable, and teach them things that aren't true. And then when they get older and learn about actual facts, things that we know to be true in science or whatever, it makes it very hard to wrap your head around that if you've already got this belief. And then it's also very, very, very detrimental to a young person's self-confidence. If they do something wrong, it's because Satan made them do it, or some sort of evil influence, or some sort of outside influence. It sort of lifts the need for taking responsibility for your own actions. It also inflicts this mindset of that this is just a practice run, and everything that really matters is going to be in heaven in the afterlife. So this world isn't as important as you may think. The environment isn't that important to take care of, because the world's coming to an end soon. Jesus is coming back on a white horse, and who cares about global warming? So guns don't do that. Okay, guns don't incite this mentality of don't give a damn about the earth. Guns don't tell you to oppress a certain population of people. Guns don't tell people who can sleep with who and who can't get married and who can't get tax benefits. That is completely an erroneous analogy. I get the concept, and it makes sense until you think about it for 15 seconds.
See what you did there? You got them all worked up. You got them all frothing at the mouth now, and then now I got to deal with them for the next half hour.
I would apologize to you if you weren't clear across the phone, having on the air, but this is. Sorry.
I agree. It's apples and oranges. When you're talking about an idea machine, which is what religion is, it's not an island unto itself. It's not an inanimate object. It is essentially it's a spark that creates wildfires. It's what it's designed to do. I think I understand what you're talking about. I mean, hey, the Bible is only a dangerous thing if you read it, believe it, and teach it. But the fact that it exists and it is presented as truth, capital T truth, is a problem, and it's something that has to be addressed.
Yeah, no, I'll agree on that. But it certainly is an issue that's being taught as truth, because, I mean, anybody who just takes a few seconds to stop and read the definition of truth or faith or belief, you will stop and realize you can have all the faith in the world that unicorns exist. But we still have yet, over the thousands of years that we've been conscious of our existence, we have yet to actually see any evidence of a unicorn. So, I mean, that's faith, and it's needed. There are certain aspects in life where one might need faith, but it should never be taught as truth, because, quite simply, it isn't.
Hang on. You lost me there. I don't know that if you hold to my definition of faith, I don't know that faith is necessary anywhere. Like some people would say, I have faith the sun will rise tomorrow. Well, that's not really faith. I mean, you're operating on an expectation based on 4.7 billion years of sunrises and understanding the rotation of the earth around the sun, and all that type of stuff. I have a reasonable expectation. I can't think of an instance, and maybe my mind could be changed here, I can't think of an instance where I would want to brandish faith as a badge of honor. Can you?
No, I certainly wouldn't say it's a badge of honor. No one should take the idea of faith as being any kind of brand or merit that gives credit to an individual. But let's go ahead and consider the instance of you don't need faith that the sun rises. Well, of course, you don't need faith. Science very easily pulls it up. But faith, by its very definition, if you look in the Oxford Dictionary, it is the belief, the releasing of yourself, of your concepts, to an idea. Now, that idea does not require any proof at all. That's the difference between people who abide by an idea of faith and an idea of science. Science requires at least some degree of supportive evidence. It has to be there. If it's not there, then it's not real, like the unicorn thing. Faith, however, requires no proof, but it can have proof. You can have evidence to support your faith. I can have faith that the sun rises, but at the same time, there's enough evidence where I could easily dismiss it. But I don't have to. That's what faith has. The scientific evidence does not. Now, is it important? Do you have to have faith?
I'm just not. I'm not tracking with you here. On this, you and I stand apart. And whenever you and I operate with an expectation or even a hope, quite frankly, I think those, if they're done responsibly, are based in the real world. They're based on personal experience. They're based on evidence. They're based on the logistics of the situation, 1,000 different variables. But the idea that I would just have faith that it's going to happen, to me, doesn't seem like a very productive way to live one's life. I don't know. Smalley, what do you think?
I don't see the point in it. I don't understand why this would be a necessary badge to wear. What does it matter if you have faith in something and it happens to turn out to be true? Why does this matter? Why is it so important to say that faith is something to be proud of?
Okay, let me give you another analogy then.
Quickly.
Let's consider people. People basically are walking variables. Any instant, something could change. Like you stated before, we're constantly changing. There is a constant fluctuation in how we act. Is one not then, by definition, almost needing to have faith? Now, granted, it is based off a certain accumulation of facts that are proven. Let's say I have faith that my friend is not going to deck me tomorrow morning because I posted something rude about him on Facebook.
I see what's happening here. Let me stop you there. What's happening here is just semantics. If you're talking about the original Latin fierde, which meant trust, yeah, you could argue that one of the technical definitions of faith can be interchanged with trust to some degree, perhaps. There's a section in my book called The Faithometer Theory, in which I completely tackle this entire subject. And that, by the way, yeah, I'm shilling again, Seth.
Which book is that?
Go ahead.
It's called Baptized Atheist. It's available on audio and also atheistaudiobooks.com.
Look, I'm operating. If you're talking about faith, like out of the book of Hebrews, Hebrews 11. Now, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Faith doesn't help us as rationalists, as skeptics, as people who are citizens of the real world. There's a better word, there's a better method for determining what's going to happen tomorrow. And I don't think faith is, at least of that kind, especially of the religious kind, is really all that helpful to us.
Oh, yeah. No, I'd agree. There is. I mean, if I had to choose between faith with no evidence or even a 70% chance likelihood of something, I will take the 70% chance.
Now, you're basing that on experience, not just a blind faith in the definition that religion uses it in.
No.
And I think that's the difference.
No.
Seth is talking about faith like we hear about it all the time, as though every time we get down to brass tacks in a debate or an argument or anything, the person always goes back to, you got to have faith. I know that doesn't make sense, but just have faith. They are not talking about the same process of elimination to talk about the sun or your friend not punching you. We may be able to lump that in under the definition of faith by pulling out the right dictionary, but we all know that that's not what you actually mean whenever you say the word faith in talking about religion. So there really should be a separate word for that. There really should be a completely separate word. And so I tend to not use the word faith when I'm talking about trust. I use faith when I'm talking about religious belief or faith in something that is completely unprovable.
You have given the comment section something to talk about, though. And I do appreciate you calling, and thanks for the support of the show. It means a lot.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, take it easy. Look, when I say I have faith in people, when I say that, what I'm saying is I believe largely people are moral, people are good. If you slip and fall in traffic, they will run out and help to drag you to safety kind of people. But that's based on experience. It's based on watching communities, culture, society, moral people acting in moral ways every single day. It's not really faith. I think I understand what he's trying to say, though. And it's right. You're right. It's semantic. It's labels. It's figures of speech that are all in play. But I'm with you. The word faith in that context doesn't seem to really help us much.
No, and also, the greater the claim, the more faith you must have between evidence and your conclusion. But if you've got a tiny claim, like I'm pretty sure my friend's not going to punch me, that doesn't require very much faith to fill in the gap because the evidence day after day after day shows that that's not going to happen. So it's almost worthy of its own word.
I've got Anders on Skype. Thanks for calling the Thinking Atheist radio podcast. Did I get your name right?
I think so, yeah.
Thanks for calling.
If it's me you're talking to.
Mm-hmm,
yeah,
sure
you're
is.
welcome.
What do you have for us tonight?
Well, this is the first time call. This is from Denmark, actually.
Welcome.
Thank you. I wanted to quickly, not trying to sidetrack you, by the way, but comparing Denmark to the U.S., and you guys having the podcasts that you have. I've listened to almost every episode of the Thinking Atheist, and just started on a Dogma debate today, actually, when I saw the description on your site. But I envy you guys in some ways, because you have an external force making you guys come together, having a strong community, whereas in Denmark, no one really wants to talk about religion. I mean, we are a secular country, so in that sense, it doesn't really come up in debates that often.
So are you saying that because it is largely a secular culture that you're not even able to kind of scratch that activist itch? I mean, do you want to be out there fighting religion and there's nothing on the street corner that you could do battle with? Is that what we're talking about? Or?
Exactly. Yeah. That hits it on the head, actually. I'm trying to make debates in Denmark, and I'm trying to...
Wait a minute.
You know,
you're on the web.
Stir up, a community.
You're on the internet.
I am. Yeah, I know. So this is the first time I've called a show.
What you may not be getting on the street corner, I have a feeling you can probably find online. I don't know, David, what's your take on that?
You know, that's why I don't move to California. I've had opportunities, and I know so many atheists, like in San Francisco or the Bay Area, and they say, "Oh, I love it here. It's so liberal." And they're like, "There's no way I would move to Texas where you are." And I say, "But we need you here. This is where the fight is." On one hand, I'll say I completely understand, and we would love to have you here to join the battle, because there are plenty of armchair atheists that want to sit back, be apatheists, and let us go fight the fight. But on the other hand, we may need to say congratulations, because ultimately our goal is to make ourselves irrelevant. Our goal is to make this issue a non-issue, because once the majority of the country is secular, that's success.
I have this picture of one of the opening shots in the film Highlander, right, where everybody knows that he's immortal and can't be killed. And Kurgan's coming, and he's out there going, "Fight me, somebody fight me." He's swinging his sword, and everybody's like, "No, stay away." That's what I'm picturing. I see you out there going, "Please, somebody engage me. I need intellectual stimulation, you cowards. Come over here."
I was talking to a professor from Berkeley, and I told her, I was like, "Wow, I'd love to get into that school." And she said, "Oh, you would hate it here." She said you'd go on one of your rants and everybody would nod their head and say, "Yep, we pretty much agree." And that would drive me crazy. She's absolutely right.
I agree with that. I mean, the thing is, I think in some sense it kind of numbs us to the larger problems on a world scale size, if you can call it that. That there are problems out there, but the Danes are, I think, mostly ignorant about it. Well, they don't tend to talk about the problems in Africa with the condoms and the AIDS and the church going out, well, the Catholic Church.
You must look at the United States like we are a circus. Like, what the hell are they doing over there?
Exactly.
It's crazy. You must read the headlines and just shake your head.
I will occasionally do a face palm when I read some posts.
Anytime Pat Robertson opens his mouth, or the Texas Board of Education, or Joel Osteen's on TV talking about homosexuals or whatever, I'd imagine not only are we facepalming here inside the borders of the lower 48, but everybody outside is just going, "Oh, this is romper room in here, people."
Yeah. Exactly. I'm afraid my hand will go through my skull someday.
We don't want that.
You know, there is one more option. I mentioned earlier in the show, Atheist Alliance International. It's sort of a global initiative to keep everyone apprised of issues that are working. You know what? If Denmark was able to get there first, maybe we can learn something. You know, maybe we can share these types of stories and, like I said, through the magazine, get it out there. Find people that are willing to write in Denmark about how they were able to get to where they are. And then these other atheist groups globally that are in more religious countries can take a play out of Denmark's book and help move our own nations forward.
God, you just got to pitch in for Atheist Alliance International. You're good at this. You really are. Anything else before I move on, my friend?
No, that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the call. Much appreciated.
You're welcome.
Got time for a couple more, David?
Absolutely.
Let's talk. You do a 3-hour show. I don't do a 3-hour show. Area code 423. Thanks for waiting. You're on the Thinking Atheist radio podcast. Who's this?
Hey, this is Matthew.
Thanks for calling, Matthew. What do you have for us tonight?
I just have a story about somebody that decided they want to come to my college the other day and preach to everyone. I figured this would be relevant tonight with the title you gave it.
Yeah, go ahead.
He came. He stood in front of the library where people are in and out every day. He had a big sign holding the 10 Commandments up, talking to everybody, using like
great comfort strategies, saying, have you ever lied, even once? I'm sure you've heard that before. And I tried to engage him. I went up to him and I said, why are you doing this? And he said he needs to preach. So I asked him, how do you know that you're right? And he said, well, tell me a truth statement. So I said, I'm here having a debate with you. And he said, well, how do you know that? I don't know if you've ever heard that argument before.
Oh, yeah.
Well, how do you know that? How do you verify? Have you heard that one before?
Yeah, oh, geez. Anybody who's talked to the Hovens or any of those cats know what they're doing. It's a total setup, and it's completely bogus.
Yeah. There's a name for it. It's called presuppositional apologetics.
There's a guy named Seitin Bruggencade who's out there with Eric Hovind, and this is their brand of apologetics, and it's a parlor trick. Essentially, they've been given sort of a divine cheat sheet by Yahweh, and without this divine revelation, inspiration, you can't properly understand the Bible, and if you can't properly understand the Bible, then you properly can't understand truth. And so anybody who doesn't buy into all this horseshit is automatically sort of, you lose the game kind of a thing. It's a total cheat.
Yeah, he went on and on about needing to have the Holy Spirit open your eyes to be able to understand that you can't have absolute knowledge without God at the beginning of it.
The other part of that is, how do you know this is wrong? They'll say, is rape wrong?
Oh, yeah.
And you say, yes. And then they go, well, how do you know? Where do you get your objective moral standard? And of course, the objective moral standard has to be the deity that they're pitching. There's several facets to that. I know David's probably encountered a whole bunch of them out there.
We actually had Seitin on the show not too long ago.
On purpose?
On purpose. And get this, Aaron Ra was in studio, and I didn't get to say very much, but it was a blast. We had fun with it. And I'll tell you this, the answer to that question, and you're right, they go to rape a lot, and they'll say, you have no moral objective standard to say that rape is wrong. And here's the answer to that. Here's my answer to that anyway. There's something called consequential ethicism and non-consequential ethicism. Consequential ethicism is you weigh the consequences of each individual act and you choose the one that causes the least amount of harm. So, without a deity necessary, you look at rape and say, well, rape causes harm to someone. It causes pain, it causes discomfort, it causes things that we know we would not want to feel. So, not raping someone causes less harm than raping someone. Therefore, the consequential ethicist will decide that the consequences of rape are worse than the consequences of not rape. Therefore, it is a very clear decision. The religionists, on the other hand, are non-consequential ethicists, because it doesn't matter if something causes harm. If God said do it, you do it. If God said kill your baby, or 1 Samuel 15:3, go wipe out the Amalekites and slaughter the children and nursing babies and infants, then you just do it, regardless of the harm it causes. So they try to stake claim on morality when, in fact, the secular majority, weighing individual actions based on consequences, actually has moral superiority.
And if it helps you, we actually did a show in April of this year. We called it Morality. And we spent 90 minutes just delving into secular morality and the basis of ethics. And it's a fascinating show. In fact, I'll make a note here to link that podcast in the description box of this show for anybody who wants to go back and take a listen.
I just had one more thing that I wanted to say in the conversation I had with him. I decided to try to throw him for a loop and ask him about other religions, because I know he's given his so much thought, or at least it seems like it. So I said, well, how do you know that the Quran is false and you're not out here slandering Allah? And I think the funniest part of this conversation was he said, because, and then ignored me from that point on.
One thing a lot of those guys do, when they, I'm not interested in having a lot of those guys on the air, David. You're braver than I am, because I've seen in the past that there are some of their ilk who will take bits and pieces of the interview that's on your show, and then they'll go and they'll edit it selectively, and then they'll present it and sometimes even sell it on their own website for $1. And I just don't trust a lot of them. Of that particular ilk, there are a lot of people who are theists who are believers who they're more than welcome to come on the show. I'm not talking about them, but I'm talking about some people who are really acting in an unscrupulous way out there. And I'm a little gun shy about giving them the time of day for fear that they're going to go and use a bunch of audio to communicate ideas that were never actually communicated. It's intellectually dishonest.
Yeah, I know that there's the risk there. The reason I tend to do it is because, for one, I want to give the listening audience tools on how to respond to these people when they see them in public or they come to the universities to preach. When they encounter these folks, I want them to see our failures and our successes and learn from that and grow from that and be able to defend themselves in public. Because we break down what they're doing. We don't just play the game and try to keep up. We say, all right, stop. Here's what he's doing right now. If he tries to talk over us, I'm in control of the mute button. Listen, here's what he's doing right now. He's trying to pigeonhole this into this because he's saying this and he's saying this. So he has divine revelation that tells him he's true. So did Sir Isaac Newton. Sir Isaac Newton was a pretty smart guy. So, Psi 10, what if you and Sir Isaac Newton disagreed with one another, yet you both claim to have divine revelation? Which one of you is right, and how do we tell? And then we unmuted, and he says, because of Scripture. All right, well, you're back on mute. So now it's about interpreting Scripture. It's about interpreting Scripture at this point. So is it divine revelation, or is it Scripture?
Yeah, so, look, a little birdie told me so is not an argument. I had my invisible friend tell me so is not an argument. And I find those people extremely frustrated. I do thank you for the call, my friend. I appreciate you being part of the show and for listening.
Thanks for having me, Seth.
All right, I got time for, let's do 2 more and call it a night. 512, thanks for waiting. You're on the Thinking Atheist radio podcast. Who's this?
This is Absol, and I was just calling because earlier I heard you guys say about how, like, everyone comes down to the stage and starts fighting against things. I just wanted to say I am here and I am trying. But I'll be honest, there's no, kind of like what the guy from Denmark was saying, is that no one here wants to talk about it, ever. I live in a small community, and even though it's mostly Christian, I still can't find too many people to spar with. It's kind of funny, actually.
Well, is it that they believe they have absolute truth and they're not interested in discussing? Or is it that they're casual believers and they're not really living with true conviction? I mean, why aren't people engaging? Or how are you approaching them might be a better question.
That's what I was going to ask.
Well, I think it's more the first one, is that a lot of people, like, whenever I try to say anything, they kind of just brush me off and they don't. Like, I point out a lot of things. I mean, like, what I end up doing is mostly it's talks with friends, and even occasional people ask me, like, sometimes, because a lot of people do know my disposition towards things like religion and politics and so forth. And it's rather, sometimes if someone ever asks me about it, or if I see anyone, or if they approach me and challenge me about it, I know how to go about it. But by the end, they just brush me off, like I said earlier. However, if I approach them with it, what it tends to be is that I just say things like, hey, what's your opinion on such and such? And, you know, what I do end up getting a lot of the time is just pointless banter, more or less, about them kind of throwing the petty insults my way, like, oh, what, you're a Satanist or stuff?
We know exactly what you're talking about. We really do. How are you approaching them? Are you walking up to them in the middle of a conversation about something else and going, by the way, your God's a bunch of crap? Are you talking on Facebook? I mean, what's your tactic?
What I tend to do is it tends to be things like in free time between classes and during lunch, and the occasional recess that we do have, it tends to be things that where I know someone sitting around, and it's never complete strangers. It's people I know but I'm not particularly acquainted well with. And I tend to go and I kind of strike up a regular conversation, and then if it gets towards it, I do bring it up. I say, hey, what do you think about that kind of thing? And it kind of goes in that direction. Like I said, it tends to be a lot of misconceptions about what atheists and so forth actually believe in, what they think about things and so forth.
So you're not hitting them over the head with it. You're waiting until it comes up organically in everyday conversation, and then you're engaging. Is that what I'm catching from you?
Yeah.
You said something about classes, though, right? Are you talking about at a school? Is it a university, high school? What's going on there?
No, I'll be honest. It's junior high.
Well, that's all. We love young skeptics. That's awesome. That's amazing.
Yeah, well, where I was going with that was ultimately creating a secular student alliance, reaching out maybe when you get into high school, or maybe reaching out at the high schools, getting a secular student alliance affiliate there, and then tabling and having an Ask an Atheist Day. The people that are interested in sparring will come up, and they may not necessarily be interested in just sparring, but may be interested. And the people wear name tags. Hi, I'm David. Ask me. I'm an atheist, ask me. And there's an arrow pointing up to their face, you know. It's a very common way, because then you have an opportunity to hand out some Secular Student Alliance material and have these types of conversations. But I think the approach is probably the most important thing. And the approach of asking questions I've found to be the most effective. Do you believe this? Do you believe that? And when they say yes to some erroneous claim, why do you believe that? Do you believe that would be necessary? Do you believe that pardoning, do you believe that punishing the innocent could pardon the guilty? Why does it make sense that an innocent man died and saved a bunch of bad people? Why do you believe God would watch suffering and do nothing about it? And not in an accusatory tone, but more like, I'm very interested in why you believe the way you do. And then as you start to explain yourself, I think it would turn people off if you're approaching it in such a way to say, this is why you need to be an atheist, because your religion is stupid. Instead, come across like, I don't care if you become an atheist or not, but I do want to explain to you that I don't hate God, and I'm not angry with God any more than you could be angry with leprechauns, but I do want to explain to you why I don't believe. I love you too much to believe you're going to burn in hell forever. I care about humanity too much to think there is some magic being watching over us and allowing the suffering to take place. And so you explain it in a way to say, I just want you to understand atheists, not necessarily join us. Then that kind of removes the pressure that you're dragging them kicking and screaming out of their indoctrination.
I think David's right, especially in the power of the word I is amazing. You know, if you go in and you say you this, you that, you've automatically put many people on the defensive. If you walk in and say, look, this is the position that I have taken, and this is kind of how I got there, it allows you to diffuse the situation right off the bat. No one's on the defensive. Well, they shouldn't be on the defensive, and you're allowed to make it really a first-person account. So it's like they have a window into your life, and then now they're prompted to ask questions. Instead of being told information, now they're actually sort of priming you to find out more. And I would also encourage you, if you're going to have these conversations one-on-one with someone who's a devout theist, whenever possible, if you are prepared for the discussion, I think it's always nice to have people sort of around who can be, without being participants in the discussion, can benefit from the dialogue that you are having. You know, it's amazing how many people sit in the shadows who are secretly doubting or going, this doesn't really make sense. And they are waiting to hear a discussion like the one you might have so that they can sort of vicariously participate with all the information being bandied about. That's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, and it's also having your own identity. Being okay with representing who you are, having your secular identity, and being proud of that without necessarily insulting anyone else. My license plate in Texas is atheist. All 7 letters. Atheist. People will stop me and go, are you doing this just to shove it in my face? I don't care what you believe or don't believe. It's not for you. It's for that person who is doubting and who is terrified of the word atheist, that they finally see somebody going, well, he's not afraid of that word. Maybe I should start a conversation about it. And 9 times out of 10, I look in my rearview mirror. If there are 2 or more people in the car, they point to my license plate and they start talking and they start smiling. Either they're laughing at me, making fun of me, or having a serious discussion. Either way, it's being talked about, and that's a victory.
I just wanted to add one last thing. I really wasn't expecting to get on here, but I just want to say I admire both of you way too much, probably, than I should. I just feel like it's become one of those things. I've always been a competitive person, so when I finally got something I was really interested in and really strongly, genuinely just wanting to talk about it, wanting to say things, that I finally, hearing you guys do it and seeing what you say about things has really kind of given me another outlet of voicing my opinion and so forth, and I just wanted to say that.
No, I envy you. I mean, I think, imagine how my life would be different. I mean, I'm glad I've got my experience as a believer, but if I had been critically thinking and curious and sort of discovering the world new every single day as a junior high student, I envy you in a lot of ways, and I have a tremendous amount of admiration for you, and I wish you all the best out there, okay?
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you for those kind words, too. That was very sweet.
Skeptical young people, man, they just make my day, David. I mean, I love to hear those kinds of stories.
Yeah, I'm jealous. Like, I'm with you. I wish I would have been thinking that critically at that age. I would be so much further ahead right now.
And then you beat yourself up. You're like, what's wrong with me? How come she picked it up at the age of, 13 and I was 37. What's wrong with me? I had a Facebook post today from a guy who was a lifelong non-believer, and he didn't ask it with any malice, but he's like, "What took you so? How in the world could you have bought any? What happened?" And of course, I'm trying to communicate, and it's difficult to do so to those who have never been in an environment where everybody believes in Jesus, right? It's confirmation bias central. And when you've been indoctrinated at a very early age and threatened with hell, they often don't understand the power of those types of situations. Area code 904. You're on the Thinking Atheist radio podcast. Who's this?
This is John Karp, and I am the fourth listener.
Hey,
calling,
fourth
John.
listener.
What do you have for us tonight, my friend?
Well, I'm sort of an atheist podcast groupie in that I listen to everybody. And the reason why the Thinking Atheist and Dogma Debate are my two favorite things to listen to are not because of the way that atheists are treated on your two shows, but the way that you think about and the way you talk to theists, because so many of us are so confrontational, and sometimes we forget that theists they're us. The theists who make us crazy, who badger us, who legislate against us, who do all the other things that make us nuts, are just us in another time, in another place, in another mindset, and they're just human beings just like we are. Not that we should, any of us, be soft on religion, because religion is hateful. But the theists, the way you guys treat people just as people, and, not that there shouldn't be atheists who are hardcore and are smashing people over the head all the time with their inanity. There need to be that, but I just really love the way you guys treat people. And to me, as somebody I'm 59 years old, and I've been an atheist since I was 16 when my parents kicked me out of the house to save the rest of the family. And to me, I've always been sort of a background, quiet atheist, and the new atheism that started, I guess, in the late 80s and 90s, to me, was something that was at first frightening, I guess, to me, and then eventually life-saving. If I can tell you a quick story, I sent an email of this story to David. In 1997, I was in Winn-Dixie in Greenville, Mississippi, standing in the produce aisle, and I didn't realize it, but there was this woman standing behind me, and I turned to look at her, and she was very red-faced, and I could count the veins on her forehead, and she reached back and popped me in the nose and busted my nose. The friend I was talking to, standing there in the produce aisle, actually was an off-duty Mississippi State Patrolman who immediately snatched her up, handcuffed her, and took her out of the store. The produce manager brought me some ice and some paper towels because my nose was starting to leak. And actually, the way I refer to this story is that this really was a good day. What happened was I went out to talk to her, and I went outside actually to see my friend, and she was in the car, and she was crying and bawling her eyes out, and she was shocked at what she had done and had no idea, she said anyway, that she had no idea why she had done what she had done. She called herself a God warrior, but whatever that means. But she said she was as surprised as I was that she had done the things that she had done. And actually, after listening to her and knowing what religion does to people's minds, I believed her. And I turned to my friend and said, let her go. And he said, are you sure? And I said, yes, let her go. And he did. He let her go. Right at that time, there were a couple of people there in Greenville who were in the Winn-Dixie who came up to me as a couple and their son. They looked to be in their 50s, very middle class. And they said, did she just say she was a God warrior? And I said, yes. And they said, they went to the same Pentecostal church as her. And they said, there's no way that a God would want her to be his warrior. And I tried to be polite and agreed. But talking to them, we talked for an hour because they started to ask me about, well, we heard you say you were an atheist. What made you become an atheist? Are there books about atheism? Where do you find out about this stuff? Who else might be an atheist that we would know? And after talking to them for almost an hour, this guy whose name was John just stopped and he said, you know, I've doubted this stuff for a long time, and just seeing that God warrior punch a man in the face for no reason just put everything together for me. And I guess now I realize that the person that I've been praying to all my life was really just me. And I should have, I guess, shook his hand, given him the free baby that atheists get. But instead, all I did was just said, good. Well, my face was starting to hurt. And my friend came and picked me up in the car. And this was 1997. The only thing I knew about organized atheism at the time was American Atheists in Austin. And I said, maybe you should contact them. And, you know, but the fact that on that day that I saw the moment that man freed himself, to me, not only made that day, I mean, it made me appreciate my own freedom in ways that I hadn't since that day at 16 years old when my parents kicked me out of the house when they discovered I was an atheist.
John,
it was my humanity in looking at that woman and seeing myself in her that made it so that I had no animosity towards her. That even though I've explained this story to other atheists who oftentimes tell me, oh, well, I'd have put her in jail or I'd have punched her back or all these other sort of things, I was her and we are them, and they're not the enemy. They have crazy ideas. And the fact that the way that I see that you guys treat theists to me is just amazing. And I really just wanted to say thanks.
Thank you as well. I do appreciate that. I want you to know, I read that email, and this past weekend, actually, I was in Matt Dillahunty's living room. It's me and Matt and Beth Presswood and Dave Silverman. And we're sitting around having a beer, and I told them your story. And anybody who listens to my show and knows who Dave is, they know that we are pretty much on opposite sides of the spectrum when it comes to approaching theists. And we acknowledge that, and we laugh about that, and we smile about it. And we were driving around Austin in my truck over the weekend, and we joked about it. And he was actually in Austin to give a talk at the university there about why Firebrand atheism is actually the nice thing to do. And so I started challenging him on that, and we're just... There's no microphones, there's no cameras. It's just me, Matt, and Dave, and we're just going at it about this topic. And I told them your story. And just to show you how everybody deals with this differently, Beth, in the sweetest Southern accent ever, said, "Oh, how sweet." She thought it was wonderful that you let the woman go. Silverman went, "Oh, he should have locked her ass up as long as possible."
Right, that's what I hear. That's what I hear all the time.
Laughing at this dichotomy, right? And then Dillahunty says, well, as he usually does, this could go either way. Either she looks at this and says, here's an atheist who I just punched, and then he lets me go. Maybe I need to rethink my position. He said, or she's back there thinking, aha, I can get away with anything when I have God on my side.
Right.
And that somehow God magically softened the heart of the dark atheist enough to say, let her go, and now she feels invincible and could go around punching everybody as a boxer for Jesus. So I thought that was brilliant.
That's a great name for a band, by the way.
Yeah, Boxing for Jesus. Yeah, so it was interesting to see the different viewpoints. You know, I understand. I'm not sure what I would have done at that point, but obviously it came of, something better came of it at some point. But I would be interested to know. I'm wondering. There's kind of a cliffhanger because I wonder, at the end of the day, what does she look back on this and think about? 5 days from then, 10 days from then, 10 years from then, what is she thinking about? Does she think she got away with something? Does she think God saved her from jail that day?
I understand that, but, for me personally, I felt that I could only be responsible for my own actions and certainly not hers at that point. And my actions at that point are the things that I have to live with when I wake up in the morning and look in the mirror. And for me, it was obvious.
Well, it sounds to me like she was already manifesting some shame. Like, this is not me. I don't know why I did that. I mean, her natural innate morality actually kicked in. So
she mentioned the fact that she'd never seen an atheist before in her life, or at least, of course, obviously, that she knows of.
I want to say one more thing before he goes. I think you touched on something really important, and that's whenever you said that you had to do what you knew you could live with. And I think that right there is the reason why you can relate to the Thinking Atheist and Dogma debate. And I don't know if Seth looks at it this way or not, but that's exactly what drives me, John. I think, honestly, I'm the only person I have to go to bed with at the end of the day. I'm the only one. So even if someone else wrongs me, if I'm in a position to make the responsible decision, and I'm of sound mind to make that responsible decision,
right,
I have to feel good about what I did, what I said, and I have to hold myself accountable for my actions and words, just like I hold my guests and my callers accountable for every action and word. And if I'm okay with who I am at the end of the day, that's okay with me.
Great call.
Right.
And
It was
much
beautiful.
appreciated. Thank you so much for all the kind words, my friend.
Certainly. Y'all take care.
All right. Have a good
Thank
night. You know, he's talking about people who go and club other people over the head with atheism. And I know Silverman does speak to this, and he and I disagree on tactics here and there. I mean, it's funny, he gave a speech on Firebrand atheism, and much of the text of what he's talking about, I do agree with. Our styles are dramatically different. But the truth is even though he is a quote-unquote firebrand, he loves people. Silverman is a teddy bear. He loves people. And he loves people regardless of whether or not they believe in a deity. He just has a different tactic when he's out there doing battle against superstition. And there's room probably for all of us. There's room for people out there who are on the front lines having the most unpopular conversations, filing the lawsuits, going into places that most of the rest of us would say, that's not really my fight. And then there's people like you and me who are over here doing our thing. And I think there are enough niches out there and enough angles to the conversation that we can probably all find a place and be comfortable there. Would you agree?
I do, but when I had Silverman on my show to specifically talk about this, the main thing that I told him, and I agree with that, everybody's got their own niche, and also different tactics work for different people. Some people don't want the nice guy approach. They find that boring. They want to talk to Silverman because guys like Saitin Bruggencate, they need a guy like Silverman or Aaron Ra. They need that. But the ones that are more open to challenging themselves and to being inquisitive about the why we disbelieve, okay, they tend to work better with our styles. But I did tell Silverman this. I said, my approach may not be effective to the people that you affect, but I don't think my approach makes your approach any more difficult. It doesn't make your job any more difficult. However, if there is someone who is a little more moderate in Christianity and they're challenging themselves and they start considering atheism to some degree, and you are the first line of defense that they see, that shock to the system could make them put the walls up. The insulting feel or the attacking nature that they may feel, even if you're not being attacking, that firebrand atheism can come off that way, and you can start to rebuild walls that were falling down on their own. You can literally scare them back to church, and then when they encounter someone like one of us, it's even harder for us to get through because they are terrified that every atheist is going to bite their face off.
Well, so he and I agree about this. I would like to see a culture where religion looks ridiculous. And when people talk about the Jesus story, the Methuselah story, Lazarus, Zacchaeus up in the tree, in the sycamore tree, and they talk about this as truth, it is ridiculous, right? It has essentially been ridiculed to the point where it is, come on, science has rendered all of this obsolete. Legitimate and honest history has made all of this obsolete. I would like to see a time, I take his point, I'd like to see a time when it has been so marginalized that the people who are pitching it as truth, the Cy Tim Bruggencates, the William Lane Craigs, the Joel Osteens, whoever, they are essentially the ones with the deck stacked against them because the culture has changed to the point where we approach these mythologies differently.
Yep, and I don't know that that's going to happen by Firebrand versioning.
I don't know either. I really don't.
I don't know, but the fact that respecting someone else and their views or validating how important their belief is to them, the fact that that is dishonest, I could understand if it was from the perspective of, we all know it's BS, therefore I must be lying if I say I respect your views. That's not the way I look at it. I look at it as though I will tell them I think it's a bunch of crap. I will. But I will say, I will validate, I know how important it is to you. I understand what that belief does to you, so I'm trying my best not to attack the person. And oftentimes, if you look at just basic group psychology, these people become a part of the group, and that group becomes a part of them. Yeah. And so when you start trying to rip that piece of religion out, they are having to remove a piece of themselves. You're asking a lot from that person. So that's really my point, is just understand, you say that you're attacking the idea, not the person, but you may not realize that the person and the idea have become a single unit. And so that's all I'm doing, is being sensitive and validating how important their belief is to them and trying to separate them from that so that we can talk about it without emotion. And I would love to hear what Dave's going to say about it. But I guess people have to tune into Dogma Debate to find out. I had to get one last one in there.
Well, you're welcome. That's why you're here. We're both going to be at Skepticon 6. That's going to be November 15th through the 17th in Springfield, Missouri. Skepticon is going to be a major event with a major turnout, and David Smalley and I are both going to be in attendance. And as I understand it, we're both doing a broadcast of our radio shows from Springfield, which will be awesome.
That's right, and it starts early. I believe it starts at 2 p.m. on Friday, November 15th.
Skepticon.org, is that right, or is it .com? Let me look here.
It's .org. And are you guys doing a fundraiser?
No, tell me about it.
Okay, so on dogmadebate.com, you go there and click the big logo that says Skepticon 6. And if you click that, we have all these crazy stunts that we're going to do as we reach certain goals by the end of October. So you go there, you donate, and every time we reach a certain dollar amount, we're going to do something crazy. And one of them involves my co-host, Rachel Nannon-Brown, shooting a 12-gauge shotgun for the first time, 6 rounds through it. We're going to get it on video. We're all doing all sorts of crazy things. Aaron says if we reach a certain goal, he's going to give his speech at Skepticon dressed as a Jedi. and I think he's probably going to try to donate to get to that point on his own.
No, yeah, he's just looking for an excuse. He's looking for an opportunity. Right. Yeah, I totally get
that money, look, it is the largest free skeptical conference in the nation. It does not cost you a dime to get in the door, so that's why we raise money. That money goes directly to Skepticon. It actually leads to their PayPal account. So dogmadebate.com, click Skepticon 6, go there and give what you can to help those folks out to keep Skepticon free for everybody else. And Seth and I will see you guys November 15th at 2 p.m.
David Smalley, the host of Dogma Debate. All success with your show, and I will see you in about 6 weeks in Springfield. And thanks so much for being a part of tonight. It was a great conversation.
Thank you, sir. I want to get you on Dogma Debate very soon as well, and I'll be talking to you about that. Thanks for having me on.
You're great on the radio, and a pleasure to talk to. David Smalley. I'm going to be back next Tuesday night. We're talking about a secular America. I've got Sean Faircloth and David Neosi on the agenda. Then Dawkins the following Tuesday. We'll see you next time on the Thinking Atheist radio podcast. Take it easy.
Follow The Thinking Atheist on Facebook and Twitter. Watch dozens of original videos on the Thinking Atheist YouTube channel. And visit our website for resources, links, contact information, the editor's blog, and more. thethinkingatheist.com.